Let's look at the next pillar, which is the performance efficiency pillar. This pillar focuses on the efficient use of your computing resources to meet the requirements, and the efficiency should also be maintained as the demand changes and as the technology evolves. So we are already seeing that we've moved from EC2 instances to containers to functions. So technologies are evolving, and you want to make sure that you are able to absorb these changes and still maintain the performance efficiency of your architecture. What are the design principles? First one is democratize advanced technologies. As part of this design principle, you offload or delegate the complex tasks to your cloud vendor. An example of this is, instead of maintaining your own database clusters, you will take up the database managed services from the cloud provider, and you are able to focus more on the development of the product and the features rather than on the infrastructure. Go global in minutes. AWS as well as the cloud allows you to set up your application so that it is not just in one region, but it is in several regions wherever your customers are located, so that they have lower latency and a better experience at minimal cost. Use serverless architectures. So serverless architectures help you to focus more on the code as well as the functions that you're writing instead of the infrastructure, the servers and all of that. This helps you to remove the operational burden of managing these servers, and in fact it can even be very, very cost efficient. Experiment more often. Because you've got huge amounts of infrastructure resources available at your disposal, you can do comparative testing using different types of resources. For example, will a M5.X large be able to handle 20,000 connections? What about M5.2X large? Will it handle 30,000 connections, 40,000 connections, or does it handle maybe 50,000 connections? So with this experimentation, you would then be able to determine a proper ratio of performance versus instances versus pricing. And finally, we should consider mechanical sympathy. That is, you should be able to understand the in-depth working of the services that you're using. This helps you to determine as well as select the right approaches or the right resources. The next pillar is the cost optimization pillar, and it's a continual process of refining and improving over the span of the workload's life cycle. So you are analyzing your environment, you are analyzing the application, you are analyzing the offerings, you are continuously changing and experimenting, and this helps you to build and operate cost-aware workloads that help you to achieve business outcomes. So you are able to minimize the cost, and thereby you are able to maximize the return on investment. What are the design principles? First and foremost is that you should have a cloud financial management team in place. There is a new body of knowledge called as FinOps, and this team, just like you have the security team, you have the operations team, you should also have the FinOps team, who is constantly looking at the costs and who is constantly looking at how to minimize the costs as well as to maximize your gains. You should adopt a consumption module. An example of this is that a production environment, your workloads will be running all the time, but dev environments or test environments, you only need to be running them for 8 hours when the people are in the office, and after that it should not be running. So this kind of a consumption model will help you to save a lot of costs. You should be able to measure the overall efficiency. So you should be able to tie the business outputs or the business goals with the workload and the cost that is associated with delivery. Will my infrastructure be able to handle 10,000 connections? Now, if I have to go to 20,000 connections, will the cost of the infrastructure double, or are there other measures I can take so that the costs are contained? Stop spending money on undifferentiated heavy lifting. The cloud provider AWS does all the heavy lifting operation, taking care of the servers, taking care of the networking, all of that. The service providers give you managed services. So let your cloud service provider worry about the infrastructure while you are focusing more on the business side of things. Finally, you have analyze and attribute expenditure. So you should be able to identify cost centers and accordingly let the cost centers know how much is the portion of their spend of the overall cloud spend. The dev team should know, hey, I'm spending X amount of dollars. The testing team should know I'm spending X amount of dollars. These kind of visibility that you give to the different teams helps them to become more cost efficient, more aware, and as engineers to more efficiently utilize their resources. The final pillar of this framework is the sustainability pillar, and it was introduced in 2022. And this pillar focuses more on our future generations. Whatever we are doing at this point of time, let's say building data centers, is adding to pollution, and how will we as this current generation define our workloads or maintain our workload so that we are able to sustain the environment for the next generation. What are the design principles? First and foremost is understand your impact. So understand the impact of the workload that you're running on the cloud, not just from the cloud perspective, but also from the customer perspective. Take all of that together and determine what is the impact. You should be able to compare the productive output with the total impact of your cloud workloads by reviewing these resources and emissions required per unit of work. The second is to establish your own organizational sustainability goals. So every workload that is running, you should be determining the long-term sustainability goals. An example of that could be that instead of growing the number of servers, you are decreasing the number of servers and thereby moving the architecture to serverless. This will help less number of servers to be deployed overall in the data center and improve the sustainability. Maximizing the utilization of the resources also contributes a lot to the sustainability. Imagine you have one server which is running at just 30% capacity. The other set of servers are running, let's say, at 70% capacity. The servers which are running at 70% capacity on a per transaction basis are at a better utilization, and therefore they are helping to sustain or reduce resources. For example, the power consumption or the storage consumption, these are being reduced because you are increasing the utilization of your resources. Anticipate and adopt new, more efficient hardware and software offerings. The cloud providers come up with better solutions, better instance types, better RDS solutions. All of these are built so that you are able to have more features as well as get more performance, derive more utilization. So instead of having a rigid environment or a rigid architecture, you should adopt these and therefore help the sustainability of data centers. Using managed services helps in a reduction of a lot of the workloads. You as a customer will focus on building the application and leave the management of these resources to AWS, and therefore you are contributing to the sustainability goals. Reduce the downstream impact of your cloud workloads. The architecture and environment that you build should be such that it should help to reduce the amount of energy or resources required to use your services. Customers should not need to upgrade their devices to use your services. All of those devices which they don't use then contribute to pollution. You can use device farms for testing to understand the expected impact, and you can test with the customers to understand the actual impact from using your services, and together you are able to determine sustainability goals. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. The AWS well-architected framework helps the cloud architects to build secure, high-performing, resilient, and efficient infrastructure. It is built around the 6 pillars that we have discussed: operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and sustainability. So it's a set of best practices which helps the customers as well as the partners to evaluate the architectures and implement the designs. Thank you so much for your time.
For more details, check the link in the description. Learn with Whizlabs. Success certified.